Knon 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to knon.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.
And good afternoon and welcome to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet. I'm here in the studio with Lerone Landis and the late Patti Fink, who is here in plenty of seconds for the show to start.
I like to be here a little bit early.
Yes, we know. It's so
you're
helpful.
absolutely right. Plenty of seconds.
What? I'm always honest. Our guests today are Espy and Carter Brown. Carter started a group called Black Trans Men. He has a conference coming up April 27th to May 3rd at the Double Tree Hilton near North Park on 75. People are welcome to attend this, although the hotel is sold out. And that was one of the things that I said, you know, he needs to be on. There is a huge need for this. So Carter is here. Espy is his wife. She works with Black Trans Men too. Carter, you know, since you can't see on the radio unless you're watching our podcast, well, and you wouldn't be able to tell if you did see, Carter is a female-to-male transsexual. Espy, we have no idea what she is.
And she likes it that way.
I am cisgender female.
Well, we know that. I was talking about lots of other things, which we will get into during this hour. Carter, tell me a little bit about your group, first of all, because, and what was the need for it specifically? Because it seems very, very specific. Black trans men. There are, you know, all kinds of trans people. Why Black trans men?
Well, first of all, thank you for having us.
Oh, we're delighted.
It's absolutely a pleasure to be here today. Black Trans Men started from my personal needs as a black trans man. And
There you go.
I'm sorry, I had to make some technical adjustments here. Black Trans Men started from my own personal needs as a black trans man, and my experience and my journey into my transition left me with a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of disconnections, and a lot of misunderstandings that I wasn't able to get from the general transgender community or the LGBT community at large, that I felt that only other black trans men would be able to understand, being that my transition ended in me transitioning into a black man in America, which I was absolutely unprepared for to the extent of my experiences.
Okay, so when did you transition, first of all?
I transitioned in 2001.
Okay, and Espy, when did the two of you meet?
In 2001.
Okay, and you don't really agree that he started transitioning in 2001, do you?
No, I don't. When I met Carter, I would say that he was already transitioned. He presented to me that he was male. He lived his life as male, and had been doing so before I met him. So for me, looking at the time before we met and then how he presented himself when we met, he was already there to me.
So does this really, in a way, say that this is kind of evidence that a transgender person is already the gender that they say they are? It wasn't a stretch for you when you found out that Carter was just really transitioning then. you're
Right.
saying, no, he wasn't. He was a guy.
Right. He was a guy, and for me, it was kind of like watching a young man grow into being a man, from a boy to a man. So that's what I saw.
And do you remember what I said when Chaz came out? Now, Chaz has been a guest on our show. And Chaz Bono. And I said, you know, when Chastity came out as lesbian, I just thought, and then later, a decade or more later, came out as transgender. I said, oh, okay, of course, that just makes sense.
Well, Carter, is that part of your journey also? If you want to tell about it, did you start out maybe thinking that you were in fact just lesbian?
Yes, actually I did, and I would say, of course I'm only telling my story, but I would say that most transgender people came through the lesbian and gay community, being that that's the first identity that you can find that's an alternative to the binary male and female gender roles and identities, as far as relationships as well as personal identity.
But if you're a trans man and you were, when you were presenting female, attracted to men, it would be difficult to go through the gay community because you'd be a woman, somebody presenting as a woman, attracted, going out with men, so you would be transitioning to becoming gay, right?
From my speculations, that would be correct.
Yeah. And then it would be harder to come through the gay community. Or are you saying really that, well, the gay community is where alternatives are?
That's basically what I'm saying, that's where people that have quote-unquote alternative lifestyles generally find community and being accepted as being different from the mainstream.
Right.
And talking about community, like David said, this is something very specific, Black trans men. Is the Black community, I know we hit some of the stereotypes today, they're much more homophobic, but in your situation or your experience, has that been true? Has the Black community been supportive or not supportive?
Are you asking, have they been supportive or not supportive of me as
of you as an
gay
individual
lifestyle or as trans?
All right, both.
That's a great question. I'll actually say that they were more supportive as a gay or living as a gay person or lesbian person because that's a little more prominent and visible now. There's not many people that can't say they don't work with someone or have a relative that's gay or even see it, on TV on any day of the week. Whereas trans, although it is growing in visibility and progress, it's still a bit unheard of. And if people have heard of it, they don't truly understand transgender identity or see the human side of it. So it's as far as, in my perception, as far as the Black community can understand it or perceive transgender identity, it's just another level from being gay or a step above and beyond being gay. And so I think that they see us as an extreme gay person, more so to say, and that does create a lot of homophobic and transphobic actions and discrimination directly in the Black community, more so for Black trans women, but as well for Black trans men.
And I think too that as a lesbian, I sort of go to Kate Clinton's the comics reference to stealth lesbians. I think that trans men are sort of stealth as well, because I think the mainstream population in society tends to think of a trans person as a female, a trans female, and trans men are kind of like, you don't see them. I think that's really true.
That's correct.
I would say, kind of like what I've added before, that in the Black community, it is an extreme, and it is just like I've said before. And Black people don't do that. That's for white people. It's that extreme, and so when what we're dealing with, we have to be able to have more people who are confident in who they are and are able to be visible, because it's a combination of two things: having people who are visible, and you can say, yeah, it does happen in the Black community. It's more of us that do exist. It's not just something that quote unquote white people do. So then if you have people who are visible and able to show that it's a not just some freak thing or it's something real, then that's one perception. And then just being able to just have the support and community that would be able to support those who are in that space. But it's a combination of those two things to me.
Okay, now, since we don't know who's listening, I want you to just define, first of all, what's the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity?
Right, that's a big difference. That's like the core of who we are, is being able to make sure that folks understand that there is a difference between gender, sex, and sexuality. Those are three totally different things. And usually when we're born, the doctors usually say, well, hey, this is the baby's a boy or girl, and people usually associate that with gender. But in fact, what he's doing is he's giving you the information about the sex of the baby, what the biological sex is. It's not the gender.
And the appearance of that sex, because it could be for an intersex person,
Right.
it may not reflect their gender at all.
Right. But what parents do, and I'm giving the explanation of it to try to define it, as opposed to saying gender is this, sex is this, So then once that happens, we go in. The mother and the parents and everybody, they usually go get pink and green things, and they're painting the rooms pink and blue and all of that. And then what you're doing then is you're assigning a gender to that person. And so what we're saying is that person actually has its own identity. It has its own gender identity. And then once that person grows up and determines that they starts finding out about their sexuality, that who they love, that's something different. So that person, that trans person, can have that experience is different from them when they're assigned female. I mean, they're identified, their sex is identified as female, but their gender is male. Their sexuality could be straight, gay, lesbian, pansexual. Their sexuality could have a span of different things. And that's not just for trans people, that's for all of us. And so, but the biggest thing that we can use, the biggest help that we can use in our advocacy is from physicians, from doctors who are, it would be a better thing for us if you say that this is the sex of the baby, and there's a beautiful world of what the gender would be. And so and allow that person to determine their own gender identity and then their own sexual identity. And so if we're doing that in advance, then we're not going back trying to understand it later as some new phenomenon.
See, and in your case, Josh, our board operator, when you were born, they said, we don't know what the hell this is. So,
And he still doesn't know.
and we still don't know. Okay, so we have the difference between sexual orientation is who you're attracted to. That's gay, that's lesbian, it could be bisexual, it could be pansexual.
And it's an orientation
And
like
that's-
portrait or landscape.
And everyone has an orientation that's
Yeah.
not specific to us.
Right.
Right, and sexuality is fluid. It doesn't mean that just because you're gay today that you're gonna be gay forever, or
Except for
if you're
Josh.
straight, or if you're straight one day. Sexuality is an experience, and I believe that it's fluid. It's not just something that you just stick with.
Sure. And gender identity is, and people hear these terms and they're confused by them, and I get it, why they are. Gender identity is how you see yourself, what sex you see yourself to be.
And I've heard it explained as it's what's between the ears, not what's between the legs.
Right. That would be an easy.
And gender expression is related to gender identity. It's how you express yourself.
Right.
So it's how you dress, it's how you do your hair, it's how you present yourself to other people. That's your gender identity. Okay, so in order to come out as transgender, it's really difficult if you don't have some role models. The first national male to female to male that I can think of, and by national I mean, and I'm talking
Pop
about
culture.
Chaz,
Right.
pop culture, everybody knows the name, goes on Dancing with the Stars, pisses off his mother for a year, doesn't speak to him because whatever, that kind of thing. And all that's in the news, and people hear about it. Okay, you came out in 2001. Male to female had been growing in, not in popularity, what's the right word?
Familiarity.
Growing in familiarity. Visibility, number of people transitioning, and I think it's grown exponentially, especially since 2000 or so. But there were plenty of role models. Who is your role model? I can't think of any female to male transgender people that we generally knew. Did you meet other people?
No, I didn't meet any other trans man until I started Black Trans Man Inc. That was the first time I physically laid eyes on another trans man.
So even after you transitioned, you didn't meet another one for another 10 years?
Absolutely not.
That's amazing.
Now, it's not just how did you know. I know I understood my being gay a little bit at a time. And it wasn't really until I was in college that I had some gay professors, knew some other gay people, that I really understood it. How did you understand what you were?
Just in my own research, as feeling as I progressed living in the lesbian culture, I just wasn't connecting, and the longer and the older that I grew and looked for the things that you look for when you mature, a relationship, and I'm growing in my identity and who I am and my goals and who I want to be. And I just could not, I felt limited there in the lesbian community, and I just started looking for ways to enhance my appearance, most of all, so that I could be perceived more as male. And I searched the internet, and it led me to transsexual, a definition of transsexual and transgender people. But even in the images and the information that I found, I still didn't see another African American transgender person. And again, just with the community, the Black community stigma, as SB referenced, I thought that was just unattainable for me, or something that we didn't do, quote unquote. But I was able to eventually find some Yahoo groups. Of course, this was after the internet. I was able to find some Yahoo groups with other transgender
And that's
people.
a huge part of why I think the gay and lesbian community and bisexual community have blossomed, why the transgender community, both male and female, has blossomed. Because you can connect with other people.
Right.
You can't figure out what you are sometimes unless you have some example. It doesn't have to be lots of examples. There have to be some example.
How many people, or not how many people, how many different areas have you heard from people that become part of your group? Like different parts of the country or world?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we absolutely have people from all over the world, literally. We have people in Africa, the Netherlands, Canada, London.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that still amazes me to this day. And everyone that joined the group online, that was unanimously the first thing said was, I can't believe there's so many other people like me. And then around the world, it's just, it's mind blowing.
And not just that. While that was happening, projects were also happening. Courtney Ryan Ziegler created a documentary called Still Black. And in that documentary, it does have Louis Mitchell in there, Carl Magid, Kyler Brodus, and a couple of other folks who stood up. And that was the first time that Carter and I, I'm going to say, had an opportunity to see that there were not only other Black trans men visible, but they were trying to be let the world know that they were visible and that there in fact exist in our communities. And so so having that project go on and us to see that documentary and then be able to experience the folks within that documentary, each of them have been keynote speakers to our conference, and they are able to bring that essence on why that documentary was important and their role within the Black trans movement. And so we were able to connect. And and be able to, through those folks, bring more visibility to the Black trans community.
We need to take a break. We're talking to Espy and Carter Brown. Their group is Black Trans Men. We're going to do an entertainment report right after we get back. Then we're going to get back to all kinds of interesting things about Carter and about being black, trans, and a man. We'll be back with more Lambda Weekly right after this. And we're back with Lambda Weekly. Josh is blasting our ears off. We have an entertainment report, don't we, Lerone?
Yeah. Apparently, Hollywood and the LGBT community was in complete shock and awe this week as news broke out that Barry Manilow got married to a man. Oh, my God.
Barry Manilow is gay.
Oh, my God. Not.
Those were the stupidest news reports that I think this one...
It is news, though.
So, yeah, it's news. He got married to his longtime partner.
Yeah, apparently
Gary.
he married his manager, Gary Keefe, last year in their Palm Springs home. So this really isn't new news. We're just finding out. They got married last April in 2014.
The nerve of them not to report it to us immediately.
I know. They're supposed to let us know.
It was a secret wedding.
Well, about 30 guests attended the wedding who were all invited under the pretense that they were going to have lunch. So that's how he got around.
I'm sure he served them lunch.
Oh, I'm sure he did. Now, here's the other thing we did not know. They've been together for more than 30 years. That's a long time. So congratulations to them.
Surprise.
Yeah. Surprise. And this is totally blown up social media.
Did anybody actually ever think that Barry Manilow was straight?
Well, apparently
so. He has never denied it. He got his start singing at the Continental Baths, the sleaziest bathhouse in New York City, I can attest, as the piano player for Hello, Bette Midler. She does not have a straight fan.
Oh, he does.
Okay, so she does. You're right. When she was here speaking last year to the Council of Jewish Women, it was a whole bunch of straight Jewish women and their husbands that got dragged to this event.
Yes.
The only men that were at that event, the only ones that were not dragged by their, and I mean dragged, by their wives, were the 8 gay men, the 8 of us who were there to see Bette.
And she was so happy to see
She was delighted to see us.
Of course. Now, of course, this doesn't surprise me at all that Barry Manilow is gay. I was just surprised at how it came out. Like, he went from not saying anything to, boom, I'm married to a man. That was a little surprising.
Oh, come on. It was the same with Joel Grey. He came out at like 80.
Right.
Who didn't know Joel Grey was gay?
Right.
Well, just my personal thing.
I saw
Unless
him in
you say
Cabaret. I knew. I was like 15. I knew.
Now, okay, so I say...
And that was before I knew about me. I knew him.
Unless you say it, I'm not going to refer to you as gay. That's just my personal thing. I wanted you need to say that you're gay before I refer.
Well, there was no need to.
Well, no, sometimes there is. I mean...
Well, no, but...
Because, come on, in reality, we live in a world, unless you say it, you're assumed to be straight.
I don't.
No
Well-
one ever assumed I was
Okay, we do have some exceptions. We have some exceptions. It's the same thing. Well, you see it different. Same thing with Jodie Foster. Everyone in her private life knew, but the public didn't know.
That's why every year when she makes this announcement for the first time, we've talked about it. Of course everybody knew. But with Barry Manilow, they're just, how would you, in what context would you say, Barry Manilow, or the gay singer Barry Manilow came out with a new album? It has nothing to do with he didn't put out an album of gay music. Well, yeah, he did put out lots of albums of gay music. That's another clue.
Like every album.
Like every album, right. And his gay Broadway musical.
I kind of put him in
Name a Broadway composer who's straight. Okay, time's up. You can't. What was the shock?
It's not a shock. It was just something that married. I put him in the same category as I put Richard Simmons, who also has never...
He has never come out. Believe me,
we know
I met Richard Simmons
has never come
years ago. Believe me, if you had any doubt, he makes Josh look straight.
That's hard.
Now, the
a
only
difficult
time I've
feat.
ever been shocked, do you remember Dr. Smith on the original Lost in Space TV show?
Mm-hmm.
I recently found out he's straight. I was shocked. Now, that was somebody who, I mean, that was one of the gayest characters in 1960s TV. I was shocked that he was actually straight. And apparently, you know, there is no indication that he was closeted, nothing. He was straight.
He was straight.
That was just an act.
Oh, well.
That's a shock. Barry Manilow. I could see some people saying, "Huh, I never thought about it." You know why? Most people don't think about Barry Manilow. Okay,
There you go. That's
do you
all.
have any other?
Oh, come
Yeah.
on. He was so big when I was in like junior high and high school in the 70s, and into college, and he had hit albums like. There was one period in time where they like the top 10. He had half of the hits.
But the singer's sexual orientation doesn't make a difference. NSYNC was a big teen band. It was the exact same big teen band after Lance Bass came out.
Right.
It doesn't matter, and it's not part of the story or the music.
All right. The interview that's been in the works for what seems like forever will finally air later this month when Diane Sawyer is going to sit down with Bruce Jenner. Now, in the interview, Bruce will publicly discuss for the first time his plans regarding his transitioning. This will also be the first time that we will supposedly see Bruce as Bruce, or the way we're used to seeing him. So I don't know if
We're going to see him
As
as we're going to see her as a woman.
That's the thing. I'm not.
Oh, we don't know.
If you see
Okay.
that they've been teasing it, you see Diane Sawyer, and you see just the back of his head. So
okay.
that's it. Her head. So I don't know if she has a new name or anything. So it's going to be interesting. That airs on April 24th. And last, the NFL's first ever openly gay draft pick, Michael Sam, was eliminated from Dancing with the Stars this week.
Aww.
Yeah. Now, interestingly enough, he did a song that's called Not My Father's Son from the musical Kinky Boots. And if you haven't seen the musical, see it. It's great. He said that it was regarding the relationship to his estranged father. Now, if you don't remember, when he came out, or when the story came out, his father said some really bad things in the New York Times. And Sam said that he was hurt about that, and he called his father and said, "You lost another son," and he hasn't talked to him since.
Do you know when he was here and spoke at the Holocaust Museum a few weeks ago? He did say that. He said he loves his father, but just no relationship there.
That's just too bad.
It is sad.
Yeah.
And he's sad about that.
I'm sure he
Do you know
is.
the other thing he said that I thought was fascinating? He said after he came out, he got a call from a player on virtually every NFL team that came out to him, told him how brave he was, and they wished they could do it, but they can't. And those were the ones who called him. He said, "I'm not going to give out any names." So afterwards I went up to him and I said, "Okay, I don't need anybody from the Cowboys or a good team, but just somebody from one of the crappy teams." And he wouldn't give me.
Cowboys,
Yeah, he wouldn't give me.
arguably.
Anyway, a nice guy.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he's off dancing. I was sad to see that.
Yeah, and it was his best performance too.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, we are talking to Espy and Carter Brown. They are from Black Trans Men. They have a conference coming up April 27th to May 3rd. It's going to be at the Double Tree Hilton near North Park on 75. People are welcome to come to this. There's going to be plenty of Black trans men there. The hotel is sold out. The conference is bigger than it's ever been, and this is the fourth year you've done this?
Yes, the fourth year.
But anybody who's interested, want to go to a workshop, want to just meet some people, you're welcome. Especially Friday looks like it's a good day for people to come, or Saturday.
Yes, absolutely.
That
Any day is a good day for people to come, but each day we do have a set track or focus for each day. For example, excuse me, I'm sorry. For example, we have spirituality. We're going to focus on spirituality one day, so all the workshops will be focused around that. We have family, community, economic equality, and how to progress if you're an entrepreneur or if you're working in the workforce, how to prepare for that and make yourself more job marketable. And definitely on Friday, that's a day that we really showcase that evening we showcase our award ceremony, and we definitely encourage everyone to come out to that. We acknowledge all the people in the community that are allies and supporters of the Black trans movement and have had a hand in it, either by being an ally, a spouse, our youth, as well as Black trans people. And along with the awards, I would like to give a special thank you to the Human Rights Campaign for being a continuous supporter of our award ceremony, and our overall conference is sponsored by the Arcus Foundation, so we'd like to thank them as well.
Good. Patti.
We were talking a bit in the break about kind of a phenomenon that I've heard from many trans people talking about this experience, and I'm interested in what your thoughts are on it. For example, white trans men suddenly obtain white male privilege. Many white trans women have experienced white male privilege and suddenly lose it when they begin presenting as female. And you mentioned earlier, experiencing and growing into your understanding now of the stigma associated with being a Black male in general society today. Can you talk a bit about that idea of privilege and stigma, and that taking on a mantle you were unfamiliar with as a personal experience?
Yes, and you're absolutely correct, Patti, in that the entire Western societal structure of the patriarchal hierarchy definitely affects your identity as a transgender person. When we look at, of course, the dominant or the most powerful perceived person in Western society or America is the white man. Second to him would be the white woman. Thirdly would be the Black woman, because she's less threatening and seemingly more intelligent. And last would be the Black man. So I actually digressed in my position in society when I transitioned into a Black man. And with that comes all of the discrimination that is even that I, prior to being a Black man, even things that I perceive to be just sort of cliche or couldn't really be that bad. All the time you hear Black men say, the man wants to keep me down, or it's hard to find a job as a Black man, and those sort of things. And I, like many of other, Americans, felt like you're just not trying hard enough. You need to get more educated. You have to better yourself. You have to, don't have a victim mentality. But I quickly came to see that a lot of those things were true, that I had become a target for discrimination in almost every aspect of society in my livelihood.
And I find that really amazing. It's especially in today's in our moment now, I would say in the last year, where we've been experiencing all of these police shootings.
Right.
And it's really come to the fore, and people are talking about it right now, about
Finally.
Finally.
Right.
Exactly. And especially this last shooting where it was, a man was shot a Black man was shot in the back 8 times by a white cop.
And as horrible as that was, the mayor of that town was horrified that that police officer was fired, arrested, and
with murder.
will be charged with murder. Yes. So, there's a difference. Or hope. I hate to say, gee, he learned from the other experiences. I don't think he did. I think he was just horrified. I'm talking about the mayor.
Yeah.
It was in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And I'm so relieved and happy that we're having this conversation as a country, and I hope it continues.
Yeah, and there's definitely a difference with our livelihood, because before him transitioning and presenting in the way that he does, if he went out or drove from one state to another, then it's, I'm concerned about your safety, making sure that you're not, the tire doesn't fall off or something. But now if he drives, I'm like, are you going to make it home to me in one piece? Is it going, am I going to have a story to tell? I'm immediately on the defensive, and because of the role that he has with Black Trans Men Inc., he's traveling a lot, or more than we did before then. And so I'm always concerned, particularly if he's driving. And each time, there's always been, when it has happened, it's always been some escalation of some sort. And even with it seems to happen more and more. Like, I can count on it happening, at least once a year. And that's, for me to plan that, like, I have to plan that. Do we have bail money? How far is it for me to drive? Who's gonna be with my little girl when we're doing all of this? And so those are some of the things that we didn't have to, I'm not worry about, because surely, if I'm driving, the police are gonna look at me a little bit differently. They're gonna handle me a little bit differently. But with him, I really am scared to death. I'm scared of my life for him to drive, even from one part of Texas to the other part of Texas, from north to south, east to west. Even within that distance, I'm afraid, terrified of my life. So imagine if he's driving from Texas to Alabama or Texas to Georgia. I don't even know if we can do that. We're just gonna have to not make it. I don't know. We're just not gonna make it.
Or fly.
But the trouble that we've been having just in Texas, it's unbelievable, and I've said to you before, I'm originally not from Texas. I'm originally from New Orleans, and I moved to Dallas because of progression. But in terms of equality, we are so far. We are so far from being equal in our daily lives. And for me to have to plan on whether or not my husband's going to make it home today, it's not equal. That's not equal.
I want to go back to your group again. And your personal story, actually, and we're going to do more of that after the break. But not only did you not have a role model of a Black trans man to model yourself on, did you have any? You didn't. When you say you didn't meet any white trans men before you transitioned either.
No, I'd actually never met another transgender person.
Okay, when you did, one of the things you said was people thought it was odd because, that's a white thing. Meaning what?
Meaning that I would say, I guess I never really understood it in its depth or its true intent, but I would say just due to
the cost of transitioning, there is
the Black community, or from where I'm from, in my level of, or my class of Black people, we grew up with more of a focus on just making it.
Survival.
Paying the bills, eating.
So in the Black community, even among people who are not opposed to any of this, and they're not saying, no, that doesn't exist, they're saying, I understand that, but you can't afford the luxury of...
Exactly.
And it's seen in the Black community somehow as being a luxury.
Absolutely.
To transition.
It's seen as a luxury, and then because it's not as common, it's also seen as a foreign thing.
What I've heard from someone who's Black said that they saw it as a fad. Like, this is just something that people are starting to do.
They're
now.
Just doing now,
right? And so
we'll get over it.
Yeah.
What's the next thing?
I don't know. I don't know. And so they interpret that as, that's something that white people do. Like it's the latest style.
Wow.
Yeah. We need to take a break.
Okay.
You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 Knon FM. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with the late Patti Fink and Lerone Landis. Our guests are Espy and Carter Brown. They are with Black Trans Men. Their conference is April 27th to May 3rd. Everybody is welcome. You don't have to be Black. You don't have to be trans. You don't have to be a man.
Just breathe.
Well,
if you're breathing, show up.
When good, like-minded, sane people talk, good solutions, good ideas emerge. So that's
and during the
idea of
break,
this
you can
conference.
shop at the REI. REI has actually moved closer to the conference.
We'll be back with more Lambda Weekly right after this.
This is Raphael McDonald from Resource Center Dallas. You're listening to Lambda Weekly on 89.3 KNON FM.
And welcome back to Lambda Weekly. I'm Dave Taffet here in the studio with the late Patti Fink and Lerone Landis. Carter and Espy Brown are our guests today, and their daughter, who's Bored to death.
She's been really, really
She has been.
behaved.
She's been wonderful. Lerone, you had a question.
Well, I don't have an exact statistic, but we've known now that trans individuals have a high rate of violence towards them, hate crimes. And to narrow it down even more, specifically trans people of color, to narrow that even more, specifically trans women of color. And I just wanted to know your thoughts on why do you think that is more with the women and not the men?
I would say it's due to most women, most black trans women have a more risky behavior lifestyle as far as their means of making income and their only opportunities to make income because of societal structures. And I would also say just most of them's ability to blend due to lack of funds to afford the hormones or the surgical procedures that they may need on an individual basis to be at the level where they are comfortable and where society is comfortable with their appearance. Whereas that seems to be a little easier for most trans men. You're just perceived as a short guy or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, but
In my case,
for people who are just listening on the radio, I want to make it real clear. There are 4 guys in the studio. One of them's Butch. 3 of us not so much. So, just so that that's
Really clear in here to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think to a number of our regular listeners as well. Your story actually is a little bit different than a very common story I've heard from a number of our trans guests who come on, who they begin to they've known they were trans since they were young. They begin to transition. Their company, surprisingly, is having a layoff. We're going to lay off 2 spots, and guess what? We have two trans people in this company, and you're the 2 that we're going to lay off. It's just because we're having layoffs, and they can't get work. They can't get, they can't find a place to live. Your story's different than that. You started, once you left the lesbian community and started to transition in 2001, or as SB says, transitioned in 2001, you kind of disappeared.
Absolutely. I just sort of went under the radar. Once I was able to, or once I successfully changed my legal documentation, and also my physical appearance, where it was easy for me to assimilate into society, that's absolutely what I did. And in all honesty, that was sort of the thing to do for transgender people in a more previous time, because there wasn't really a community per se, especially in the South. That was what you did. You found out what you needed to do, and you changed your name, you got married, you moved somewhere nobody knew you, and you just sort of went under the radar.
So from 2001 to 2011, when you say that you just didn't meet any other trans people, what were you doing? You were living in the suburbs.
Yes, sir. I was living in the suburbs. I had a really great job working in the mortgage industry. I was making 6 figures. My wife, she recently gotten one of her degrees. She was making about $75,000. So we were doing really great. And I was moving up in the company, progressing. My social life was great. I was now fully in my physical transition and just perceived as male among my friends and coworkers, and our whole
More than just
social-
perceived, nobody knew your past.
Right, no one knew my past.
I mean, maybe a few people did, but basically
knew my past.
nobody knew your past. Nobody knew your past. Okay, so, but then all of a sudden, what happened?
Then all of a sudden, at work, and when they say it's a small world, it really, really is. There was speculation that someone that I worked with at a previous job, where I had started my transition or my physical transition, and had my previous name or my birth name, that person stated that they recognized me from the previous job, and then they told someone else, and then it just kind of got into the grapevine or the gossip line, and next thing you knew, I was kind of ambushed with that information and caught off guard and confronted with, I can't believe this. Is this true that and the exact words were that you're a woman or that you have a vagina. And this is how I was confronted in the workplace.
Seriously?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I've been asked that.
Well, I believe that.
Oh no! Not to make light of the situation.
But you know something Carter does too. He is past all that garbage. Didn't anybody? This person recognized you despite the fact that you have a beard now. You used to have long blonde hair.
It was long, but it was black.
But you're bald now.
Yes.
On what grounds were you terminated?
Well, it was, it kind of spiraled or escalated from there. Basically, with the example that David said, and the end result was they said they were making cuts, and I didn't make the cut. Although I was one of the top producers for the company for the 4 years consecutively.
Lerone,
Wow.
Imagine being at work and having somebody ask you if you have a vagina. How do you answer that?
Do you want to see? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Ready for a date?
How do you answer
how
a
do you
question
answer
like
that?
that?
Yeah.
That's horrible.
It is.
Right.
I mean, the person who asked you, if they didn't own the company, should have been fired for asking a question like that. Did you file a suit for sexual harassment?
I did
Because
not
that
fi-
is.
Absolutely, and I was actually out of work for about a week for a funeral following the incident, but when I returned to work, I went to the Human Resources Department to discuss it and report the incident. But again, to my surprise, the Human Resources Department confronted me, stating that the young lady or the person that brought the information to me or, came to me, had also went to HR and said that they felt threatened by my response. And so HR wanted to sort of reprimand me in that scenario.
Well, of course, because you're a
my
black
God.
man. I mean, Lerone is as threatening as can be also. I mean, I come to the radio station and it's like, who knows what's going to happen?
He comes to the
right?
station packing.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
It's adult bullying, though.
It is
It's really
bullying.
down.
Of course it's
because
bullying.
they're penalizing you when in fact you didn't you went to work one day,
Right.
and that was it. And it was somebody else's aggressive actions, not in a good way.
And they felt threatened
Yeah.
because of Carter not knowing how to answer an extremely inappropriate question.
Incredibly inappropriate.
And that unfortunately happens to everybody in the a lot of people in the trans community on a daily basis. And I would say the difference between then and now is at that time we didn't have resources. We didn't know who to contact or
Right.
or that there was somebody that can help us. It was just this is all that we know. We can get in. If they have the last word.
Right.
But they don't have the last word. And so, but we didn't know that then.
Right.
But now today, unfortunately, it still happens. But I would like the trans community to be reminded that there are resources. There is a community to help out.
One thing I can say is that in what year was that? 2010.
2010.
Was that in Dallas?
Yes, that was in
Yeah.
Dallas.
Oh, we have protections in Dallas to prevent that. You could file a complaint, and at least
It was not in the city, though, was it?
Yes, it was.
It
in
was in the
Las
city.
Colinas.
Well, we'll talk
Oh,
after the show.
Yeah, let's talk after the show.
But these kinds of protections, and us talking about it is something we didn't do in even 2010 much.
Right.
People are talking about it now. You have a group. It's become a national group simply because nobody else started Black Trans Men. So there's a national group now. In 2015, there wasn't in 2010. You're on the radio talking about this. We're talking about it. We're just laughing, joking about it. I mean, as serious as some of this is, we can just laugh as friends because we are.
But I think the most important thing that comes out of unfortunate stories like this is that how unimportant it is with somebody, how they identify themselves.
Of course
in
it
the
is.
workplace. But a lot of people don't get
it's
that.
how you do your job.
It's how you do your job. It's like, I don't care what's under your clothes.
Now,
Can you
and
do the job?
understand, during this period, Carter had several jobs, and he was really rising way up there. It wasn't because of anything that had anything to do with trans or anything else.
Right.
It's because he was that good.
Right.
Right. I have a friend who works for, well, I probably shouldn't say the company, but they're a great company, and they have an individual. He said they're not trans. No one really knows what this guy is, but one day he'll show up in heels, one day he'll show up in a suit, One day he'll show up in a dress.
Josh.
And it's Josh, and the company, nobody says a thing. The one person that says something got fired.
Good.
Great.
So, and I'm like, you know what?
Great.
And that's how it should be, because he's a great
That's
worker.
acceptance.
It's like, who cares what he's wearing?
You know, I want to go back to a couple of the other issue things because we're starting to run out of time. You're a black trans man who's in a straight relationship outwardly to the world. You know, how you define it yourselves doesn't matter. When I asked you, when we were first talking, yeah, I'm a black trans man. When I asked Espy, I said, so you identify as a straight woman? She said, nope. I said, so as a lesbian? She said, nope. I said, bi? Nope. She just identifies as herself. You know, you said maybe pansexual would include everything, gets rid of the gender binary.
Right.
Okay. But you basically, outwardly to the world, have a heterosexual relationship, and there is, in certain ways, that's an easier relationship than a gay relationship. Do black trans men who are gay have a harder time in a different way?
Oh, absolutely. Black trans men that are gay, of course, have the whole, why did you even transition if you like men? You know, and they have to deal with that a lot. And then, of course, in a lot of ways, the trans community sort of mirrors the heterosexual community and its beliefs in homophobia, because we have men and women that are growing into their adulthood as men and women, not having too much of an example of how to be that in their own light versus what the gender roles are already structured to be. So if most black males are homophobic and they're tough, and this is the guys that you're around, as you transition into a black man, these are the images that you see or how you feel you have to be. And so a lot of those beliefs and actions are replicated in the trans community, and it has been strongly homophobic. But we are making progress in that area as well. But there are gay trans men that bear children for their husband, and they raise them as two gay fathers.
I'm not saying there aren't. I'm saying, are there different problems?
Oh yeah, they're the same problems that a gay black man would have. You have your own black, other black guys bashing you for being gay, saying you're feminine or sissy, or, emasculating you, or feeling that you're not man enough simply because you are gay.
And this is one of those reasons that you need black gay men at your conference this week.
Right,
There are all kinds of overlap in similar issues.
Right.
Well, I think the trans community experience is sort of the same thing that the LGB community experiences, in terms of we don't really know what the numbers are. We don't know how many of us are around, because if we don't meet the stereotypes that straight people have of us, then they don't see us.
Right.
And so I would imagine, and I've heard from many people that this is really true in the trans community, that there are lots of activists, but there are even more people who transition and just go lead their lives.
Right.
And that's mission accomplished.
Right.
And they just move on.
When you say people just kind of disappear, people don't assume. Barry
You never know
Manilow
that they're trans, they never get
Barry
counted.
Manilow is the perfect example, because here's this obviously gay man that people are assuming is straight just because he never said anything one way or the other, because it had nothing to do with anything. For 10 years you disappeared. Now you started this group, but how out are you to everybody now?
I'm all the way out there.
So, like, in your church where they might not have known, you went up to Pastor Jeffress and said, Pastor, I am transgender, right?
No, I never actually just quote unquote wear a trans flag, or that's not attached to my name in my introduction. I'm Carter Brown, a black trans man, unless I'm in that forum where I'm educating people about trans identity. But if I just go to 7-Eleven, or I'm with my wife and daughter at the zoo, nobody knows, and it's not it's important that I announce it in my daily life. However, I'll never deny it. You can Google me and you'll see nothing but black trans men.
But I'm talking about any of your friends, any of your family. it's difficult to have an ongoing relationship without being honest about who you are.
Absolutely, yeah, and you bring up a great point. And when we're talking about people just quote unquote living their life or living non-disclosure of their trans identity, that was one of the reasons that I did decide to become visible and to come out as a transgender person publicly, because although I did find a level of comfort assimilating in society, and I was able to progress, and I had the leniency of manhood and what that meant in society versus a lesbian, it was still, I felt that I was suppressing a part of my identity, and that I was limited in how close I could get in relationships and building friendships, because I always felt like I was kind of keeping something from them. Not that they needed to know, but just because that was who I am and a complete part of me, I wanted to.
You know, all of the employee resource groups at major corporations, they always say it's better to just put a picture of your partner on the desk and be who you are. Just bring your whole self to work. Don't spend time at work trying to hide who you are, because you're not going to work very well. You're going to spend part of your workday hiding yourself.
I fully agree with that.
You know, you'll be answering inappropriate questions like you had to do. So
what's a website or a way to contact you or to contact the conference for people? We've talked about the fact that there's going to be a conference and when it's going to be and where it's going to be, but we've not talked. How do I connect?
Sure. Again, everybody's invited. We would like everyone to come share with us at the Double Tree Hotel. The website for the conference is btac.blacktrans.org. So that's btac.blacktrans.org. Or you can give us a call at 855-255-BLACK-T-MEN.
Wonderful.
Carter and Espy, I really want to thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, you all.
Next week we have Celia Israel, lesbian representative from Austin. Week after that, the mayor.
Mayor Mike Rawlings will be here. Yep.
Well, that's very exciting.
And maybe somebody who lives in the suburbs can find out how he can get some equality where he lives. We'll see you next week with more Lambda Weekly. Have a good week.
Thank you.
KNON 89.3 FM in Dallas and Fort Worth, the voice of the people.
Business owners, tell KNON's listeners about your business. You can put your business or event on KNON. KNON currently has space available to run announcements for you. Tell KNON's listeners about your goods, services, nightclub, concert, or event. Help keep the voice of the people on the air while putting your information on the air. KNON's been named the #1 radio station in Dallas by both the Dallas Observer and D Magazine. Put your business with Dallas's #1 station. Call now for more information at 214-828-9500, extension 227, or extension 233. For more information, go to KNON.org and click on the Run Spots on KNON page. It's a great way for your business to support community radio while letting more people know about you.